a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood, and skin and bone. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day, hold a hand deep in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. I was born one morning in the sunshine. I picked up my shovel and crawled to the mine. I loaded 16 tons of the number 9 coal. And the straw boss said, well, bless my soul, you load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day, hold a hand deep in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Step aside. A lot of men didn't, a lot of men died. I got one fist iron and the other one is steel. If left it don't get you, then right it sure will. You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I hold my soul to the company store. I was born one morning in the drizzling rain, fighting and trouble are my middle names. I was born in a canebrake to an old mama line, and oh, I told Mossman, make me walk that line. You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I hold my soul to the company store. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can go. I owe my soul to the company store. Okay, so thank you and welcome to the First Church of Permaculture, our very first Church of Permaculture. And of course, the first anything isn't going to go off without a hitch, so I screwed up the recording and didn't recording the beginning, So I just re-recorded it. I'd like to add a few messages before we get started. So we're going to cut over to that video in just a second. But first, I'd like to say again, welcome. I'd like to talk a little bit about the purpose of this first church of permaculture, which is to try to use this to support more local scale activism. I strongly believe that this is really what we need in the permaculture movement, is to move towards more local scale leadership. And we're going to be trying to do that by providing a lot of live online centralized tools that people can take and use to build community, like this first church of permaculture. And we're going to use it to interview some local leaders and promote local leadership. And if that's you and you're out there doing local scale permaculture activism, I'd love for you to be involved. I'd love to hear from you and get you involved in these. So we'll talk a little bit later in the recording about some more of the details of the first church permaculture. But before we get there, I do also want to just remind everyone that this is going to be a kind of multi interface permaculture design certificate course. There's nothing quite like it out there, but we're hopefully going to do this in such a way that people can join in for these first church events for free and get a really good overview of what permaculture is all about, get a really great start on designing their own landscapes and building their own community activism. And for people who want to take it to the next level, we're going to have the Transformative Adventures Permaculture Design Certificate course, which has some of the most advanced tools for designing really sustainable, vibrant, local scale business models out there, so that it will really help you be successful in financially supporting your activism in your region. So keep in mind that as we go, we'll have some more details about how to get involved in the full Permaculture Design Certificate course. But for now, just feel free to hang out here on these Sunday First Church events for free. I hope you'll share them with people in your networks and in your community. I hope they're entertaining and that they go beyond just information to feed our bellies with our gardens and go into things that will really feed our souls. All right. Thanks again for joining in and watching, and enjoy the rest of the video. Well, I did forget to record the beginning of the meeting here, but that's okay.
We'll now go you can see it.
No. Now everybody can see it. So this is a little bit of some shots of Stetian's place, and boy, that's a great example of beauty in abundance right there. Hopefully, maybe at one of the next couple classes, you'd be willing to give us a brief tour now that you got outside internet. You can kind of show us around.
Sure, we'll schedule that. I'd love to.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I'd love it. All right, a few more people joining us here. Okay, so with that said, yeah, I am very excited to be getting this thing that's been a long time in the making, the first church permaculture going here. And I even put on my Sunday best here for it. I've got some nice organic cotton jeans on here, and this is that I bought used for something like $10 on eBay, and I've got this I bought for like $10 as well. It's I used jean jacket or jean blazer, and I have, I don't know if I can show it on here. This camera keeps correcting to keep me in the middle of the screen, but here I've got on this beautiful Luna Moth art t-shirt. Of course, this is the Transformative Adventures logo here. Oh, hey, Noah. Glad you could join us. Well, this is a beautiful Luna Moth logo. Yeah, it is. It is. I really love the T-shirt too, and I got this. It was beautiful art done by Joey Peterson, who's been a longtime member of our Transformative Adventures community here. And it's another thing that we're hopefully going to be doing is using these to promote some of the work that people within our community are doing. And I think Joey's on. I hope he's still on. So come in. And I just like to point out that oh, there he's raising his hand. So hopefully he can unmute. So if not, oh, another North Carolina too. Oh, that's great. If not, then that's fine. Let's see. Oh, there he goes. Okay. So yeah, I love this kind of thing, and this is just something that I love what he's doing, because I know that by supporting Joey and checking out the cool T-shirts that he's making, we'll be able to, he's going to use that energy of those resources to invest in regenerative assets in his own community. And really, that's what this whole permaculture thing is about. Joey, you have anything to add to that? You want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I started up doing the T-shirt thing when I recently had to move, so I had to think of like a regenerative project I could do remotely, because I don't have property anymore, and I needed to raise some cash. So I found this print-on-demand service that is the only one I could find that actually has natural organic materials, and I went through and they had a whole sustainability section on their website. So went through and like did a lot of research before I got into it, and I was just super glad to actually find a place to be able to find like natural fibers with a sustainable program and natural water-based inks, and like actually something I'd want to wear, because for the longest time I wouldn't buy anything but from a thrift store, because pretty much everything you could buy, there was some aspect of it that was terrible. And I know if I felt that way, there's got to be at least a few other people feel that way. And I've sold a decent amount of them so far. It's a nice little side income.
That's great. Yeah, Joey, it would be great if you want to throw that that link into our chat. And I love it too. A lot of the messaging is very regenerative, and so when people are wearing these T-shirts, you can also, get some of that messaging across too that we want to get across. I love the stuff that you're doing with it. And by the way, Joey's not paying me for this. It's just us co-promoting within our Transformative Adventures permaculture community. I would just love to use this kind of space to support each other in this sort of way. So I'm happy you could join and chat about it a little bit. So
yeah, I saw a lot. Go ahead. I was just gonna say, I definitely, as far as like the messaging go, I wouldn't like the type of messaging that like would be going on in permaculture groups, and the type of thing that like would start a lot of conversations when someone would say it to me. I would just like would never see it out in public. I would never see it on shirts or advertising. I was like, well, I guess I should just make that though. And then I actually, to be 100% upfront about it, I don't own any of my shirts, but I've got a lot of feedback from other people that they've been a pretty decent conversation starters, especially a lot of the plant-based ones. People come up to them and start conversations, and it's a good like segue into this type of thing. Just start a conversation that doesn't usually start in public.
Yeah, I've worn this one out to a couple of places, and definitely people have mentioned it. And so I got to tell them about Transformative Adventures and about permaculture, and the symbolism of the Luna moth within the Transformative Adventures network is that it is a symbol of transformation. And the Luna moth is also often associated with the moon, and which we could say as night and the feminine as well. And so for a lot of us who associate exploitive agriculture and the shift to that, to things like patriarchy and to kind of a dominance culture, just because that's kind of built into a lot of agriculture, then this symbol of the moon and the feminine and of transformation is a powerful symbol of the kind of future that we're hoping to build. So yeah, it's a great kind of conversation starter, definitely. And a lot of us are people who would rather spend our time playing with plants, right? We do permaculture because we're comfortable with plants, and maybe not so comfortable with people. As we talk about clothing more as a community, one of the things that we can talk about is, yes, we should be trying to dress and clothe ourselves in a way that's not just sustainable, but ultimately more regenerative as well. And it's an opportunity for those kinds of conversation starters. One of the discussions we had was that's always great to wear something that gets people's attention or something that can start a conversation, because as plant people who would rather hide in a corner behind the plants in the house, or it gives us something to actually connect us with people. Well, anyway, Joey, thanks for joining and telling us a little bit about your shirts and your program there.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna throw in one more thing. I do commissions, and I've had a couple people in the regenerative community reach out to me to have them make shirts or designs to help their business, and I love to do that too. I had a friend who has a tea shop that I helped her do, and a friend with a farm. So if anybody's interested in that kind of thing, that's the type of collaboration I'd be super interested in, especially since, like you were saying, a lot of us just want to deal with plants, and not a lot of people are good on that like advertising side and anything like that. I'm super into helping anybody out with that.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. I love to getting an inside view for everyone on your permaculture kind of right livelihood development. It's something I think all of us also need to be thinking about. Is we can do it in ways that go beyond just playing with plants. That's important to talk about too. So as we talk about things like clothing and art and culture, those are all things that we can do in more regenerative ways. So it's great to have that conversation. And as a reminder, on this first Church of Permaculture Day, that this is the kind of discussion I'm hoping to have more often. So if you've been involved in this community and you're watching this live, or you're watching this on recording, it's going to go up on YouTube, then I absolutely invite you to connect with me and chat about scheduling something to chat on one of our upcoming Sundays. All right. Well, with that said, anyone else have any other pieces of news, or want to say hi, or just have anything to bring in before we continue on? Just scrolling through to make sure I don't see any hands, or feel free to just unmute and speak up if you do. Otherwise, like I said, we'll have a chance a little bit. Oh, I see Sandy maybe unmuted.
Sandy's always wanting to talk.
Oh, good.
I just want to say hi.
Oh, great.
And that I'm very excited to learn. So that's really all.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. I've appreciated all your comments and your participation in that Transformative Ventures group. I think it's just a great group on Facebook.
I think it's a fabulous group. And you guys are excited about the things I'm excited about. And that's not easy to find sometimes. I'm kind of alone here in my excitement of nature and bees and flowers and food and stuff. I mean, they humor me, but they don't really get it, the family.
Yeah. And, as we continue on, hopefully one of the things that we'll accomplish with this program is I would really like to use it to help people organize small local get-togethers. And this is just the idea that some of us had. So I've been doing my local landscape transformation program now for, I think I've done that program now for 6 or 7 years formally. And that is like for people who know what a CSA is, community supported agriculture. A CSA is where you pay for your food to a farmer up front. So the community supports the farmer in advance, and then they each get a share of the produce back, and they get it as things are available over the course of the season. So, my own business model was, to be quite honest, struggling a lot. And so I really redesigned it. I was looking really hard at this community-supported agriculture idea. In fact, I had done CSAs before, and thought, well, I could do community-supported permaculture, CSP. And so that was the whole idea. And it was a subscription program where people could sign up, and it usually ran May through, it ran through the season. And people would get a community for the season. We'd have monthly classes, kind of like this one, that people could attend, which walked people through the permaculture design process. And people got their seeds and their plants and got to taste weird things like sea kale and chocolate mint and basil mint and walking onions and things through the whole growing season. So it was kind of everything people needed to start their program. And I'll tell you, for one, it was great because it was instantly an income that worked for me. And two, it was great because it generated an amazing local community. There were so many people who were really interested in coming together in a community with that sort of thing. That was all offered together. The community, the seeds, the plants, consultation, all kind of put together in one place. So a lot of people have been doing, and I see someone wants to say something. Check, give me just a second. So a lot of people have been taking that model and doing it very successfully, but maybe not as many people who could. And I think one of the barriers is the social component, which is why we're trying to do this sort of thing. So maybe in the future, what this will become is an interesting sort of little interactive podcast a couple times a month that has some fun stuff going on. It's some interesting conversations, some music, some art, maybe some theater, who knows? And people could also have their local kinds of programs going on as well. So it'd be, we'll see if it works. Someone have something to add to that? I think someone started to say something. I can't see you. All right. But we'll have more information on those types of programs. And Sandy, so long term, what we're hoping to get to is maybe we can use some of these sorts of things to help you organize locally and grow your own local permaculture community and your support in the way that that worked out for me, and in a way that's working out for a lot of people who are doing this kind of program. So that's the idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I think can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think this really has promise. I mean, because I've been into this since the 60s when it's called Back to the Land, and everybody thought we were crazy and everything. And now I'm kind of blown away by people who are getting interested in this because they see the need. Finally, I saw it a long time ago, but it's really starting to catch hold. And so jump in there. I got pretty shy because people thought I was crazy for decades, but don't hold back, folks. I mean, the planet, Mother Nature needs you. Jump in. She'll help you. She'll give you ideas.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? A lot of the time we think that we'll have to work really hard to do it. Most of the time, really what we need to do is just get out of nature's way.
Exactly. And because I've been doing other kinds of activism too since the 50s. And there is some intelligent force that's on our side. Because the most amazing things through grace have happened. And so but I know it's awful because it's awful when so many people think you're crazy. I know, but now's the time. And those mysterious forces have been helping us against all odds. for a long time, and they're ramping up.
Yeah.
So jump in.
Absolutely. And, to go along with that, I want to say, since this is going to be recorded and placed on YouTube, isn't that the truth? We're if you judge us from the values of the dominant culture, we all look pretty mad. But if you judge us from the values of nature and sustainability, who's mad? And so maybe we all need to be a little bit mad, and that's great. So,
but judged by this, when you consider the culture of the many indigenous people who've amazingly survived against all odds, it's very resonant with them. And if everybody had listened to them, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now. And so people are beginning to listen, finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great message to start our first Church of Permaculture with. And since this is going to be shared on YouTube and shared around, I'll invite all of you who are on here to share it with your networks as well. Spread the good news. And then I'd like to add the Transformative Adventures Permaculture community on Facebook and online has just some of the smartest, most experienced permaculture people I know of in the movement, and hopefully we're going to have them involved in these chats. We're going to have great quality discussions like this. I want to, as Pamela just mentioned, she's been involved in this movement for a long time and has a lot of experience and has studied with Bill Mollison and has.
I was very lucky to attend an event at Evergreen where he appeared, and he hung out with us and answered questions till like 3 a.m. I just adore him, but I didn't ever take a course.
Thank you for correcting me. But and Larry Korn too.
Yeah, he's with us, folks, on some level. You got to know it. He's the best, most good-hearted person in the whole world. He exemplifies what Masanobu Fukuoka said, that the main purpose of permaculture is cultivating, I can't remember the exact words, but cultivating human character. And there's no better example than Larry Korn.
That's right. I believe it is that the purpose of farming is not to grow food, it's to perfect the human spirit. I think that was maybe close to it. We might be both.
Something like that. Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't know that book, Larry Korn translated Masanobu Fukuoka's book, One Straw Revolution, which is just one of the most inspiring books that I have ever read. So can't recommend it enough. One Straw Revolution.
And he worked at Masanobu Fukuoka's farm for 2 years and lived in the mud huts out in the orchard. And he helped Masanobu Fukuoka when he came to the United States. And I think with some of his other travels, he was just totally devoted to it 1,000% with a heart of gold.
And I have to thank you for joining us too, Pamela. Thanks for being with us and adding to this great discussion.
Oh, well, thank you for having it. I'm so glad to see it progress. And I can tell you, having been there in the early days when the only way you could keep it going together was everybody was a sweetheart. And because what else did we have? Nothing. And Mike is one of it. Mike has that spirit. That's why I'm here.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet too.
Well, it's very true. It's very true.
Well, on that note, I would like to make sure that we fit in each of these Sunday First Church of Permaculture events. We're going to as I said, we're going to have some news. We're going to have some chit chat about permaculture ongoings. There's going to be some music. There's going to be some other fun stuff. We'll probably play some games. And each time we're going to get to some of the permaculture design certificate course curriculum. So someone who watches through this through a year will get a really deep overview of all of permaculture. And this summer, we're going to be starting with the specifically the gardening and landscape portions. So that's what I've kind of pulled out and put together into the landscape transformation program. So let's jump into that and get started with some ideas about transforming our landscapes. And for those of you who are on here, who are watching this, who already are experts at transforming your own landscape, I hope that you'll find something about this process and this information that'll help you help other people along in the process too. So let's see here. I have, this will help me go through this. I have, this is the first slideshow, the Landscape Transformation Program folder for people who do the Landscape Transformation Program business model, and you have this information or material. This is the Landscape Transformation Program first slideshow. Also, I'll say this process follows along the textbook Beauty in Abundance. So you can also get that if you want to follow along that way. You can check out Beauty in Abundance. You can find it by searching for going to transformativeadventures.org, and you'll be able to click through and find a link to the book if you want to get that and follow along. All right, just checking in here also on the chat, making sure that I didn't miss anything. I'm glad we got that link up for Joey Draws Pictures. All right, so check out his stuff there too. All right, so here we are, landscape transformation and food forest program or community supported permaculture program. I've called it a lot of different things. And the just to talk about some of the course objectives for this whole program, it's about leading you step by step through a full landscape design and transformation process using the classic permaculture design process with some updates from our Transformative Adventures community and from my own experience as well. We're going to help you grow greater familiarity with foraging, weeds, and wild edibles over the summer. We're going to build season-long gardening skills and holistic natural gardening methods every month through the summer. And we're going to help you grow a collection of high-value plants that will transform your landscape. That's one of the big things. In a little bit, I'm going to show you around here. And I just wanted to be able to make the point now how quickly, in a few months' time, this garden has already become productive. We ate a salad with our guests, with friends last night that came almost entirely from the garden here, and we did a lot of toppings on a pizza from the garden here, and we've only been here for a few months. And I just want to make that point that when we're talking about landscape transformation, we're really talking about getting the right plants together that can do the work for us. And we'll talk over the course of the summer about selecting really high value plants that will do that work for us. Next, to help you establish your first locus of your landscape. And this is, for me, one of Bill Mollison's great insights, that if we can focus on just one area and get people to get one area right, one little place that's like a self-sustaining ecosystem, we'll call that a guild in this class. If we can get one guild right with a lot of these really high quality plants, that we'll call these plants guild matrix plants. So those are two terms we'll use all summer. If we can get people that plant collection and get one guild right, they will have the tools to do all of the rest of their landscape. So that's job number one. So if you don't have that yet, and you're watching this and you're attending these and following along, make that your number one objective over the course of the summer, is to design and start a plant collection and get one guild right. If we can do that, we can transform our own yards. As we can transform our own yards, we can transform the world, right? So that's our goal. And finally, to leave you confident with a plan and a process for transforming your landscape and meeting your goals. By the end of the summer, hopefully everyone on here will have that. So, this is kind of what most of us kind of come to this with, which is to say, this was my last project. This was the lawn there when I moved in. And I have to say, we didn't get along very well. I would give and give and give, and it would take and take and take. I'd mow the lawn. I'd have to water it because it was on a slope, and all the water would just roll off when it rained. It was brown and dead by June anyway, and I got nothing back for it. So I decided to transform it into this. And this is about 2 years later. And already at 2 years, it was producing a whole lot of food, had a lot more biodiversity. It was catching and infiltrating most of the water that fell on the site. Already you can see a few years in, getting lots of yields on it. And a few years after that, by 5 years, it looked like this, and was producing virtually all of the food, or more food than the household could eat. Plus, we actually sold a lot as well, on just a few hours of work per week on average, and which it actually took less time to maintain this food garden than it took to maintain that whole gosh dang lawn. People would always visit it. They'd say to me, boy, I wish I had time to have a garden like this. And I'd always say, I wish I had time not to. This garden actually saves me time compared to all the time that I spent mowing the lawn. I'm reminded of that because we're back in a new place here. Becky was on the call and we're starting to garden here, and I already feel like I'm spending a lot of time mowing the lawn. So we're going to maintain some lawn because there's some lawn is good. It keeps the neighbors happy too. But if you can convert a lot of it to high productivity gardens that are also great for wildlife, it ends up actually saving you a lot of time too. So that gets us to this big idea for today, which is transformation. We're not talking about setting up gardens short term that require us to continue to work all the time. If I had just made an annual garden, going back to this, if I had just made an annual garden, then every year I would have had to come back and restart that annual garden, redig the annual garden, replant all the plants, harvest all the plants, and start over again next year. Which means that at some point in time, you come up to time constraints, right? How much area can you do with an annual garden? Maybe it's 10,000 square feet probably per person is the number that Grow Bio intends to put on it. After that, you're done. You're never going to get anything else done. And if you leave for your brother-in-law's wedding for a week, the whole garden can go to weeds and mess or pests, and you're done for the year. So you get trapped. But if instead we set up systems and transform into systems that are self-maintaining, like forests, that also produce a lot of food, then in a short amount of time, it can get down and only take a couple of hours a week to maintain. So this idea of transformation is really important. In transformative adventures, we call transformation is a system shift from one stable state to a new stable state. So a lawn is pretty stable, right? A lawn is you and you maintain it with the lawnmower. If you switch to an annual garden, you know, you've just replaced that maintenance with other stuff. But if you switch to something like a food forest, you've switched to something that is a much more stable state. So we're always trying to, so this is what transformation means. It means moving towards self-maintaining systems and they're stable. Just giving a little space in case anyone has any questions or comments about that. Okay. In other words, it kind of looks like this, right? This is one of my little garden guild areas, and it's one of my favorites. And as you can see, it looks a lot like a wild forest. It has pawpaws all over. It has lots of honeyberries and gummy berries. The tree in the front is a quince. You can see the big pawpaws in the background. There are tons of native plants in here and pollinator plants. And one of my students, who's a long-term farmer, visited this small area, and she visited it in May for this class, for the first landscape transformation class. And she said, there is more food in this one small little area, just in this one time of year, than there is in my whole farm in the whole season, or in her whole annual garden, she meant. And that is the kind of power that we can get to when we create these self-sustaining systems that are just loaded with biomass like this. So you see there, one key to transformation is to use perennials instead of annuals. So here are a few of my favorites. On the bottom right here, I have a perennializing bulb fennel, and all of those fennel bulbs you see there were harvested this time of year in May. Now, in Michigan. Now, most people know that fennel bulbs, you grow all season long as an annual, and you harvest them usually in September, October, November, when they finally are sized up enough to harvest. And they're usually still pretty small in Michigan. It's hard to get good grocery store size fennel bulbs. But if you find the right plants and you select them, then bulb fennel, not just herb fennel, bulb fennel can be grown as a perennial. And one plant can produce like 10 big grocery store size fennel bulbs, all growing next to each other in May in Michigan. And that's pretty incredible. And you don't have to dig the soil, you don't have to till, you don't have to plant them every year. And those plants often live 5, 6, 7 years. So they're long-lived perennials that way. So perennialized bulb fennel is just a great example of how we can switch from annuals that take a lot of work to perennials that can last over a long period of time. On the top right up there, I see a mix of two of my other favorites, Turkish Rocket and sea kale, which are long-lived perennials that I just adore. You can eat them, as you see, like broccoli. Even last night, it's our first year here. We've been in this garden for just a matter of months, and already we were harvesting small flowers and florets from sea kale and Turkish Rocket for our salads and our pizzas. So these kinds of perennials can start producing really early on too. What are those things on the bottom left? Anybody know what those are? No, I'm sure somebody does. But those are my Christmas crones. Crones are an old vegetable that were pretty popular in Europe for a long time. And they're a mint that has an edible root that has a texture that's a lot like water chestnuts. So, and they take to pickling really well. So I pickled them with a little bit of food coloring in red and green, and then I can make coleslaw for Christmas because they're really great texture added to a coleslaw. And these Christmas crones then have a nice pickly flavor. Yes, Crosnes, like crossness. But I'm told the pronunciation is crones. A lot of people also call it mint root because I think because they're afraid to try to pronounce the word crones wrong. So you could also call it mint root. And another great thing about this plant is it's another perennial. It grows like a mint, so it's super productive. And it has a special quality to it, which is that like fennel and Turkish rocket, it is really strongly repellent to grasses and weeds. In permaculture, a lot of us call this a fortress plant. So by using these plants, perennial fennel and mint root or crones and Turkish rocket, and putting them in the right places, not only are we designing gardens that are very low labor because they're perennials instead of annuals, but we're also designing gardens that will help do our weeding work for us. They're keeping grasses out of the garden and they're keeping weeds down. So those are, so this is give you some ideas about some of the keys to transformation. I heard someone kind of coughing. Does someone have anything to add to any of this? Just scroll through, make sure I don't see any hands up.
Are you selling these plants or seeds to these plants?
This I have a few. Available. Pamela, I'll add to the list of some of these plants this year. For the last 10 years, selling these plants through my landscape transformation program has been my major stream of income. So these are the kind of things that when we do landscape transformation programs, if you want to make a business that is high impact, it's really helping people transform their landscapes, change their gardens and their lives, setting up a landscape transformation program where you get people these plants plus some recipes on how to use them, some familiarity with how to manage them. I'll tell you, if you set up a program like that, you get people locally these kinds of plants, you will see lasting impact on people in your community. You know, I used to teach just permaculture courses, and usually those courses would end and everyone would be incredibly inspired to have all this great information. But then they wouldn't know what to do next. The power of the landscape transformation program model is that we talk about some of these plants, a few each month. We taste them, we try them, we get some familiarity with them. You know, as we hopefully transition this first Church of Permaculture into something that has a live local component hosted by you fine people out there, then what we'll hopefully be doing is getting you to lead people in your own location and to trying some of these plants and doing some cooking with some of these plants and showing people how they work in the garden. So the long answer to that is, Pamela, definitely send me a text. And otherwise, you know, I only have very small amounts this year because I'm trying to rescale up my program to restart my own local landscape transformation program, because it's been the easiest way that I've been able to make a living, and it's been super high impact. Just checking in on the chat. I'm glad, Jill. It's a really great thing. And oh, the wind chimes. Oh, thank you. Yep. I am so used to them out here that I don't even think about it. And let me take those down. Thank you so much for mentioning that. 1 second, technical difficulties. Thank you for letting me know. That's great. I'll have to edit out every little wind chime when I post this video. All right. Let's see, what else do we got here? So that's one key. And and just to kind of show you too, this process, another key that we talk about in the first landscape transformation program class every time is just one basic startup technique, one basic startup gardening technique that's super useful, and that is sheet mulching, if you're not familiar with it. Oh, my volume dropped. Okay, you know, that could be because the volume was automatically selecting for my voice. So if we want to make permanent landscape transformation, one really great tool we can use is this tool of sheet mulching, which, instead of digging the garden every year, allows us to make a garden by deep mulching, as you see in this picture, and then planting directly into it. And when we do that, we can create gardens that last really well over a long period of time. So this is just another great technique to get people started. Over the course of the summer, we're going to talk about a dozen different no-till ways to start new gardens. But if there's one way that's probably the best way to start one small collection of high-value perennial plants, it's probably this one right here. And you can see this same garden later on in the year. And you can see nice dense plantings that help control weeds as well. A garden like this is going to be a garden that requires very, very little in the way of weeding if it's maintained well and harvested well. So this is the good enough sheet mulch from the book Beauty and Abundance. And it just shows you how this kind of garden is made. It's usually started with a weed barrier of cardboard or newspaper. Make sure you get the pieces that have no tape on them and don't have shiny surfaces. You want cardboard that's plain brown cardboard or newspaper without shiny surfaces on it, because that probably contains some plastics and maybe some other chemicals we don't want. So then we lay that down over wherever we're going to build the garden, and then build a mulch pile right on top of that. And I'll tell you, once I discovered this technique, like 70% of my gardening is done with this technique. You know, once I discovered this technique, I very rarely do I grab a shovel to dig a new garden bed. You know, I still do, but it's very rare, because this technique just instantly makes it so that you hardly have to water a garden. You hardly have to fertilize a garden. If you have like 4 inches or more of organic matter layered up, that's about the same as including an inch of compost in the garden. So, which is what's usually recommended for an organic garden. So if you layer on this sheet mulch, you really don't even need to fertilize the garden. And in a lot of climates, you can get it so you hardly have to water the garden as well too. Not in Mediterranean type climates necessarily, but in a lot of climates. So my last garden at Lily House, and really this garden that you see here, had very little watering even in the first year. So another big key to transformation then is designing so that we don't have to water. So this to me was one of the big successes of Lily House. And I know Joey, who we met earlier, had the same thing. His garden, because he designed for water harvesting and water wisdom, I know he said he didn't really have to water his garden either. So you can start to think about these things. you want to reduce the work you're doing in the garden. Design a garden so you don't have to weed it. You have very few pests. You're using those fortress plants to keep weeds out, and you're designing the garden to harvest all of its own water. What you're looking at right here is the design for the water harvesting systems at Lily House, my last project. So our gardens can be designed to harvest all of their own water. We're going to be talking about this in a few months from now. We're going to talk about all of the ways, the most practical ways we can use to harvest our own water. By the way, before we continue on very much, I just want to make sure that there's, see a little bit of, ask if there's any questions or ideas or thoughts about this idea of sheet mulching. Anybody else want to talk about sheet mulching? Have you given it a shot? Okay, just like to leave a little bit of space. All right. So just continuing on with this idea of what landscape transformation means. What's another big labor issue? Oh yeah, sheet mulching gets better and better over time. If you make a sheet mulch this year, in 3 years, it will be magic. It's just such a great technique because of that. Whereas if you start digging a garden, in 3 years, it's going to be completely bust. The fertility is going to be gone. The soil carbon is going to be gone. It's just going to be all weeds, and it's going to be, unless you're adding a lot of compost. So sheet mulching really is magic over the long period. What's another of the big problems that people have in gardens? Grasses encroaching on them. We're going to talk about this too. This is just a bit of a preview of what this means. But landscape transformation means we're looking at all the potential problems we could have. Things like watering, weeding, grass encroachment, and we're designing systems so that those problems are no longer problems, right? So that's what we're trying to go to. If you like, this is a page, a little guild from the book Beauty and Abundance again. Deer problems, absolutely. You know, we're going to talk about deer problems next month at the next Church of Permaculture. It's one of the things we're going to be talking about because permaculture gives us some great tools to talk about critters and how to deal with them. And we will start talking about those permaculture's most powerful tools in the next class. And all I can say is that there's no one single quick fix for them, in my opinion. The best result we'll have won't be a quick fix. It will be a complete system, holistic design that designs the garden so that those things are no longer, those critters are friends and no longer problems so much. Someone else has something to add? Maybe not. So
No.
yes.
I
could add
have
on that. Go ahead, though.
Was that Pamela?
Yeah, but somebody else too.
Oh, I was just stationed out in Vermont that we are always being asked because we live kind of, on the edge of civilization, whether or not we are getting deers and various critters, and chipmunks are an issue. But aside from that, it really is just about designing. I mean, there's an abundance in the pattern of edges. They just don't come in. They're much content with the stuff around the garden. And as it draws in the other like avian predators, even the rodents are kept down. It does start working for itself. I just want to testify to that.
Pamela, you have something to add? Thanks, Keisha. Please, thank you. And Pamela, you have something to add?
This is a backtrack thing about grasses. Something that people may not know is that all grasses are edible. That includes long grass. You can juice them. They actually have more nutrients than the the expensive wheatgrass juice that people buy at health food stores. And you can make green smoothies out of them. You can then drink it with the fiber if you want, or you can sift the fiber out. And so as you eliminate it, you can eliminate it by eating it.
Absolutely. A lot of the seeds of a lot of our exotic grasses that we find in our yards are also edible and surprisingly good. It's been a few years since I've done it, but I used to like to go and harvest wild grass seeds. You have to find which ones have nice big seeds. A lot of this perennial lawn rye can have surprisingly large seeds. And then you can grind them in a food processor and add them to like wheat flour and make biscuits and pancakes out of them. I find that they often have kind of a nuttier, kind of like almost peanut butter sort of flavor to them, and I really like them. Oh, sounds like I know I saw Joey just recently did that too. So yeah, absolutely, they can be used.
The kind of grass that is the most nutritious is quack grass. So you can get back at it by eating it before you get the roots out.
Yeah, and you know,
fight back.
Yeah, and you know what's really surprising to me about that one, Pamela, is that one of the ways it can be used is the root crown. So they actually have some tender parts right down by the root. So if you can pull out that or just that top of the plant or that root crown, that can be dried and turned into a flour that has almost the same sort of nutrition as the flour from the seeds. Again, if you process it in like a food processor, you have a lot of like grassy material that's extra. You have to get rid of that, but then you'll have a powder that's left over that you can add to your pancakes or whatever.
Huh. And it's one of the things that's a great treat is to find out that the most nutritious plants are the ones that grow like weeds or actually are weeds. And so knowing that quack grass, the most difficult of all grasses, is actually the most nutritious. It has it's very high in silica.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I saw some other questions there too. Tish mentioned poison ivy. I will say poison ivy is a huge pain in the butt. It's a native plant, but that doesn't make me like it anymore. It's great for wildlife. A lot of different animals eat it, and birds eat it. We're the only species that is apparently really horribly allergic to it. But that still doesn't make me like it anymore. And, the only thing I can say is that, again, a strategy that looks at whole system design is going to be the one that's going to be the best for dealing with poison ivy too. So you might have different strategies for controlling poison ivy in different areas of your yard. And that's also something that we can get into over the course of the summer. In fact, it's such a big deal. We might do a whole Sunday on Get Behind Me Poison Ivy. We might have to have a poison ivy prayer group. So yeah, we might talk about spend a whole Sunday talking about strategies for that. Another good one would be mosquitoes, honestly.
Or if it's poison oak, I can tell you, if it's a small plant, can be eliminated in a matter of weeks if you just continually put concentrated urine on it. It wipes it out pretty fast.
They'll kill most plants, really. Another thing you can do is lime the soil. Poison ivy, like poison oak, both really like very acid soil. Poison ivy really wants a nice acid blueberry kind of soil. And so if you're having it show up as seedlings in your garden, one cheap thing you can do is agricultural lime, and try to raise the sweetness of the garden soil and that should help with poison ivy germination pretty significantly. That doesn't really help if you've got like woods around your house and there's poison ivy all through the woods. We'll talk about some more strategies for that sort of thing later. Thank you. And it's great to see that we have questions and we have some things that we'll be talking about in these future classes. So just to finish up this whole idea for this first day on landscape transformation, transforming our landscapes is great for us. It can reduce our time that we're spending in the yard, and it can help feed us. In fact, it can feed us a really highly nutritious diet that's far better than what you can get from the grocery store, and on a lot less time than most people think. But it's also a great thing we can do to help transform the world. This is again taken from Beauty and Abundance. And I just want to say, transforming your landscape can be powerful climate action. It can directly pull carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the soil and plants. Transforming your landscape can help feed the world. Gardens that integrate food can help grow local food sovereignty and food security. We can save endangered species. We can provide habitat in our yards. And more importantly, reduce our reliance on the corporate food system that is the leading cause of ecosystem destruction and biodiversity loss. We can steward water. We can catch water, clean it, and sink it in to recharge our aquifers. We can reduce flooding. We can increase climate resilience by shortening long supply lines. We can reduce our consumption of limited resources by growing sun-powered resources like food, fuel, building materials in ways that actually fight climate change. We can enhance our sustainability by learning, by observing nature's closed loop systems. And we can build political and social capital with each other. Beauty, plants, and good food are powerful touch points for building friendships and local support structures. This will ultimately transfer into supporting activism and art and other important work, and even building our political capital. So, and ultimately, of course, we can fight the corporate supervillains that are destroying the planet by reducing our dependence on some of the world's most destructive industries, like the food industry, which is the leading cause of climate change and extinctions, and the plastics industry, the largest polluter of water and soil. So ultimately, all these things together can help change hearts and minds, changing people's minds and teaching them to value nature and the earth. And when we do this right, we create viral change through the power of contagious acts of beauty and generosity. If you think about what we spend our time doing as Americans, we spend all of our time working to get money, usually so that we can take a vacation or have a weekend. Usually what we want to do is get away from our lives, go someplace else, to someplace with a beautiful natural environment or a beautiful culture, because we don't have that in the places where we live. And when it's time to come home at the end of the weekend or the end of the vacation, we actually get depressed and sad because there's nothing back home except our own lives. What if instead of saving money to go someplace else, we invested that money in creating truly regenerative, beautiful places to live and be right where we're at in our own communities? So that when it's time to come home from vacation, we don't get sad, we get happy, because we'll be going back to the place where our communities are so beloved to us, and our landscapes are so beautiful, and our lives are so meaningful that we'd rather not be anyplace else. If we can get that right, we won't have to twist people's arms to create societal change. People will line up for the new world like it's the new iPhone, right? What we have to offer, tons of beautiful food and beautiful ways of being in beautiful landscapes. So that's what we're going to be talking about this summer. All right. Does anyone have any thoughts, anything to add to any of that? Oh, Jill says she'd love to hear anything on grafting philosophies in permaculture. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Oh, we'll definitely in the landscape transformation program. Oh yeah, absolutely, Sandy. In the landscape transformation program content over the course of the summer, we have lots of cool stuff about permaculture strategies for plant propagation and grafting. So we definitely will get into that. In fact, as people leading landscape transformation programs, one of the best, kind of most important things that we can teach people is grafting and plant propagation in really smart, easy ways. Because if we can do that, then we don't need big corporate plant propagation either. We can be the people who help provide plants through community agroforest nurseries, right? Okay. On that note, does anyone else have anything, any questions or thoughts or anything else you want to bring into this discussion? Otherwise, I'm going to go and give you a quick tour around here and just show you a few things that I've got going in this just few months old permaculture garden. It's a baby permaculture garden. Well, you can see some of the things there are to eat in a baby permaculture garden.
That's a fabulous idea.
All right. Well, let's go take a look at that. If this works well, we'll see. First shot, I believe we finally have internet that will work in the garden. So let's go take a look around. And first thing we got here is, one second, our permaculture dog, Nadia. Gotta have that. And oh, there she goes. And here's Jerry Cat. You can say hi to Jerry, who's a little doing what Jerry does best, sleeping. Okay. So here we go. Out. And in this case, with this design here, one of the first things we have to have is a little dog run. So we do have an enclosed area for the dog to run around so the dog isn't running around and smashing all the garden. But then right outside, I have my finally just kind of put together permaculture zone 1 garden. So this is the area where, when we talk about pests, this is the area where I've put a lot of the plants and produce that are most prone to critters wanting to eat them. And they're things that I want to use a lot. So my greens are in here. There are herbs in here. There's that sea kale we talked about. Most of the beds, if they're next to the grass, have fortress plantings around them to protect them from the grass. And of course, it's permaculture. So of course, even though I've got a bunch of herbs in the garden, I still want to have a nice little herb spiral. Herb spirals are something we're going to talk about probably at the very next class. So this garden has lots of daily eating greens and lots of herbs to eat through the season. And just a little trick here, we talk about fortress plants. One thing I love to do is, this is going to be like a box hedge at the front of the garden, only it's going to be made of oregano plants, and we'll carve it so that it looks like a little edging of box, but it's really going to be made of oregano. So when I trim the hedge, I get to eat oregano, and oregano is one of our best fortress plants. A lot of these medieval or Mediterranean herbs have a strong allelopathy to grasses. So putting that oregano right next to the lawn is going to give a great barrier that keeps that lawn from invading into the garden. And a lot of times when people do that with oregano, it's more likely that the oregano ends up invading the lawn than the lawn does invading the garden, which is a good problem to have. Speaking of plant propagation, first year on, of course, we have to have lots of room for plants. These are plants that I've been kind of selling and planting out into this garden. And all these plants, most of them, came from a little tiny garden that I had last year. And looking at all this stuff, you really see the value of permaculture and these guild matrix plants we talk about, because in a very tiny little urban garden, we probably grew thousands of dollars of plants. So that when I moved in here, bang, instantly, the garden was filled with plants. We talked about some of these plants. The yellow flowering plant there is Turkish Rocket, a great edible broccoli-like plant that is a great fortress plant as well. You can see the chive flowers I've been harvesting early on. This lemon sorrel is another great fortress plant that I love. And you see walking onions all over here, this perennial onion that lasts all season long, even into the winter. I just like to show some of those plants that we're eating. If we were doing a live landscape transformation program, we'd be running around tasting all these lovely things. And so as we get this going, and we maybe have some folks like you doing local versions of this, hopefully you'll have these plants in your garden and you can take people around and have them eat your plants and get to know about permaculture. I'm just testing to see how far I can go with my outside Wi-Fi here. Over here, you can still see we have lots of lawn to convert, but I do have a good start on my Zone 3 garden, my main production vegetable garden. Here you can tell it's a full sun area, and you can see this sheet mulching technique I've been using. Here's a bed I haven't finished yet. You can see that cardboard starting to be laid out, and you can see I'm starting to pile organic matter on it. You can see kind of different levels of how done the beds are. This one I'm starting to get more organic matter on. And because I didn't want to spend a ton of money on setting up this garden, a lot of this material has just come from whatever I had available to use. So this is lawn clippings and sticks and whatever I could find. Eventually, over time, this garden will actually look pretty. Right now, it looks a little bit like a bunch of cardboard with some stuff on it. But by the end of the summer, we'll get this all filled in. And this is one of the tomato guilds. These are 2 tomato guilds that are featured in the book Beauty and Abundance. So this is just the same 2 guilds that I have in that book. In the section on holistic natural gardening features these guilds. And these are guilds that I've done for years. So even though they're tomatoes, they're just tomato plants, they have lots of perennials in there to protect them and keep them taken care of. And, I just cracked open the book and recreated those because no need to make it up. I've already got it in there. One pretty thing here I'd like to show. This is something I've been very excited to see in this new landscape. All of these beautiful daisies being allowed to grow out. And so these are oxeye daisies, and you have to be careful about which ones you're eating, but they are all edible, and the greens are quite tasty, and the flowers are edible as well. I really like the greens. A lot of them have a celery-like flavor, but you have to be careful because some populations of these have an aroma that people think smells kind of like manure. And so some of them don't. You'll find some that smell like celery and some that smell like manure. You definitely want to eat the ones that taste like celery. But these taste pretty darn good. I've been eating them already, and it's So lovely to see these. Which leaves us with one last important gardening technique for today. And that is observation. Because imagine if we had moved in and I just tilled all this up and turned it into a garden without waiting to see. I would have missed out on this beautiful resource of this meadow already here waiting for me. And so it's so important to spend time just slowing down and listening and not observing with the idea of things in your mind, but just really being open to what nature has there and what nature is showing us, and to listen and to look without thoughts in our mind, to clear our minds and just be open to what nature is saying in a place. And perhaps this is our first and most important technique as we start to permaculture a new place. And it reminds me that today we're also observing Memorial Day. And while our country observes the memorial of soldiers, I think that we should also, in our community, take a moment to observe and remember people who have lived their lives to make a better world and to be part of our movement and to share their knowledge of things like permaculture and in creating a better way to live. And all of the beings who have lived on this planet in simple, peaceful ways and modeled for us what kind of beautiful lives we could have here on Earth if we just stopped trying to turn everything into money all the time. And that reminds me that we're here on Sunday morning at our first meeting together.
Amen, brother.
And we're talking, thank you, Dennis. And we're talking about this sort of thing. We are joining in a tradition of long resistance and regeneration. So I'd like to close singing you a little song as we observe, sort of a memorial song and also one of resistance. Deep river, our home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Oh, don't you wanna go to that gospel feast, that promised land where all is peace? deep river, Lord. I want to cross over into campground. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday for Memorial Day and our first Church of Permaculture. And I hope you come back again and continue on our landscape transformation journey. Anybody have any final thoughts to send us off with? Feel free to.
Noah has something.
Yeah, Dennis?
Oh, I was saying Noah has something. I think he's
Oh,
raising
Noah
his
does. Oh,
hand.
okay. Oh, I didn't see it. Thank you, Noah. Please, yeah.
Something a little off topic. Issue that I struggle with is emotional resilience or emotional permaculture. On June 2nd is a documentary about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu called Mission Joy, about two old men laughing their asses off and finding happiness within and not without. And I think I posted a link to it. I think that's important for permaculture people to develop our inner permaculture resources so we can do what we do best.
Absolutely. What a great suggestion, Noah. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you post it on the Facebook page. Noah?
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. That's great. That's a find. Thank you.
All right, great. And thanks, Zoom user. Thanks, Kevin G, for joining us. And Dawn, too. Yeah. And hopefully in the future, and we'll have more people involved in these. We'll do little breakout sessions, too. And I think we had a great discussion even today. I got a lot out of it. So thank you, everybody, for making my Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I missed these meetings.
Oh,
Well,
good.
They weren't like this, but I mean, I've missed the classes.
Thanks, Mike. This will
Yes.
grow. It's going to grow. We know it will grow.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you. All right, everybody. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.